Yeah, I haven't memorized it all, but okay, here we go.
All righty, welcome to the Esoteric Beat. This
Thank
is
you.
my old pal, Daniel Costello, or I hope I'm saying this right, Jai Simha Das,
That's correct.
who has a pretty cool, well, how to put this exactly? You're working on a project where you are combining yoga and self-realization with divination. You want to
Yes,
tell us a little bit about that?
absolutely. So I have this thing that happens to me is I'll have problems in life like everyone does. And sometimes my logical mind will just hit the wall. I won't be able to come up with a solution or figure out what's going to happen and what should I do now to secure a future that I want based on what just happened, what's happening right now, and what I want. And sometimes my logical mind just does not produce results. So in those moments I turn to divination, and usually I just use tarot, but like you had mentioned, I decided that I was going to create my own versions of it and still use tarot on myself when I have those things happen to me. Yeah.
So, and I have a whole spiel on my other show, Tarot for the Soulless Materialist, where I like to talk about how I mean there's a lot of superstition surrounding tarot, right? But I like to explain it in purely kind of I mean if not materialistic terms, but without any reference to like woo-woo kind of stuff. And I think that we have an intersection here where the logical mind likes to think in these kind of linear patterns, right? And we can break it up by using randomness. So tarot cards, you're shuffling cards. I understand you've got a system that involves the rolling of dice, and this can allow the intuition to sort of break in, right, and interrupt the rational mind, which is kind of getting us stuck, right? I mean, sometimes the rational mind think it has really good reasons to keep us stuck, right?
Right.
In order to kind of open us to insights, open us to, I'm going to get a little bit woo here and say, open us to like gifts or blessings from the divine. However we might define that, it could be your higher self, it could be, literally the divine. It could just be uh, you know, um, different places that your brain might be coming from.
Right. Right. You can get as woo woo as you want.
So tell me a little bit about self-realization and your path.
Well, I grew up in the yoga tradition and more specifically bhakti yoga. And, you know, it, yoga is much more complicated. Let's just say that I dip in all of the knowledge and wisdom of yoga, although I have that specific path. And I was also certified in hatha yoga when I was younger. So I can do the physical. And also, there's a lot of philosophy, ritual, different prayers. So it's very holistic, is kind of how I see it. It's not just yoga of, oh, I just stretch. It's it's much deeper than that, and it ultimately keeps pointing back to God, which is something that sometimes has been stripped from that tradition. But there's no escaping it. The deeper that you study, it just keeps pointing to the same place. So it's a deeply spiritual experience. It's not simply yoga, and not to say that that's negative. Stretching is in physical exercise is super important. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just that in our modern culture, a lot of times what happens is that the physical is there, and that's what they're selling at the yoga studio. And then they took out the mantras, and they took out the philosophy, and they took out the spiritual element, and that's okay. I just would prefer to find creative ways. Like even this is a creative way of bringing that back in through something that's just seen as a game or a hobby.
Yeah, there's a great book in religious studies recently. Name escapes me at the moment. That was written about how kind of like the reception of yoga in the West has turned it into like calisthenics, like the stretching we do before PE class or
Right.
whatever. And there's reasons for that, right? Because like you're saying, there's kind of this agenda, there's this need to commercialize it and to make it palatable for Western audiences. We gotta kind of strip God out of it, like when they translate Rumi's poetry and they take out Islam, right? So I understand you're also interested in the science of mantra yoga.
Oh, absolutely. And that does actually factor into this a little bit. I haven't really weaved it in yet, but the thing with anything that can be shown as a number. So even symbolism in art, say a six-pointed star, it's number six. Or in Om Namah Shivaya is a famous mantra. There are five, variations of that. I don't know what the right word is. Five syllables, whatever. There's you can do by syllable, you can do by how many words is in the sentence, any way of finding a number. So, and then also Om Namah Shivaya corresponds to the five elements, all five of them, not just one of them. That's a perfectly balanced mantra. So I like to take those and sort of use them as fodder. Anything that I can pull from any tradition, whether it's ancient history or it's yoga science, philosophy, etc. Anything that has a number I can use. And then at that point to create, say I rolled one six-sided dice. So I have the number six. Now I can pull from anything that I feel like, but I'm doing this intuitively. The choosing process is not logical. I do it quickly and rapidly because I feel like if you go too slow, it's like trying to do lucid dreaming and to try to get too involved in the or what do they call it? It's a spontaneous kind of channeling where you're right and you're getting thoughts. If you do it too slowly, you're influencing it too much with your brain. So the point is the rapid flow kind of prevents you from getting caught up in your own macerations, for lack of a better word. I don't think there's any perfect science to that. That's just what works for me.
I'm reminded real quick of this book I've been reading called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's all about like the psychology of these two different systems that the mind has. One of them we can call intuition, the other we can call reason, and there's this great example where if you're like having a nice walk with somebody and talking, and walking and talking, great way to do philosophy, right? Great way to get some thinking done. But if you ask them, can you multiply 23 times 37? They're going to slow down in walking, right? Which is like, the brain has these kind of like electrical capacities, right? And you can overload those, which I think is a big part of the goal, right? When we're trying to do this kind of work, and if the rational mind is getting in the way, let's kind of overflow. Let's overload it, right? So tell me a little bit more about. I'd like to get your definition of self-realization, and maybe a little bit more about your personal path. I understand that you have a story to go with why you believe in reincarnation.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny you mentioned that because not very many people know about that, but we did grow up together. So things get around, right? I don't tell the story a lot, but now I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with it because it's not something that people generally believe in. Two, I am now branded as woo woo, and my credibility goes down, all that kind of stuff. So I actually finally got to a point where I said, you know what, I don't care. I'm just gonna be honest. So diving right into it. To me, self-realization is the same thing as what we would consider enlightenment or nirvana or samadhi. There's a lot of different names for it. It's basically a super conscious state of mind where you are not tired, but you are very calm. Your mind works very fast, but you can also go very slow. It's a sort of like perfect equilibrium that any human being can potentially be in. I don't know very many people who have that or have attained that, but I do believe it's real, and I believe it's just something worth pursuing. It's like if you don't know what the goal is, you're not going to get there. So it's important to at least know that this is possible and it's worth pursuing. It's valuable. It's not just I need a boat, I need a house, I need to get married, I need a kid, I need a dog, I need a cat, I need a microphone. It's just like people often get really wrapped up in this mundane reality, like fulfilling all their materialistic and relationship goals, and then completely disregarding the spiritual. So I try to encourage people that you can still do all that and be on this path of self-realization. It doesn't really take you out of that. In fact, you're going to enjoy all that more because you're going to have more to bring to the table, so to speak. So that's self-realization primarily comes from the yoga tradition, but is not limited to it. I would say that the practice of Islam is the same, that the practice of Judaism, Christianity, Catholicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, whatever the ism is that they all have the same goal of, a lot of them say, I'm trying to merge with God. Well, that's what self-realization is. So it's not just attaining that state of consciousness or mind, it's being merged with that infinite reality that most of us call God, and being in tune with that. So that's, it goes deeper than that, but I would say that's the best explanation.
Great.
Oh,
And so your own experience now, when you were very young, something interesting happened.
yeah. So it started when I was about 2 years old. And I was having recurring nightmares of being in a dark place that I couldn't get out of. And my mother somehow in real life was able to do prayers and use the appeal to a specific aspect of the Divine Mother. In this tradition, we call her Gayatri. And that divine being brought me out of this hell realm that I could not get out of. And I was a kid, I didn't know what was going on. So that was one. The second instance was a nightmare that I was having where I was sleepwalking. And evidently, according to my mother, because I don't know what I was doing, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. This was in the same age range. And I ran into the wall and I knocked down a whole shelf of books. It was a bunch of drama. And she had to shake me to wake me up. I don't know what was going on with that. All these are going to lead to what I'm talking about. And so this created a doubt in my mother, a wanting to know, a concern. So then she had begun to come in contact with who would be my guru, who has passed on since. And so I met him at 5 or 6, and she was concerned, and so she brought this to his attention. So then he was able to verify. And keep in mind, he was a saint from India, Sant Keshavardas. So when you hear things from a person like this, it's different from when you hear it from another. And I'll just say that there is a level of credibility, and in that tradition, they respect it. In the West here, we may say, oh, he's just some guru. But trust me, he's a little different than just a guru. So he said that, oh, well, I know what this is. He says, in India, this is very common. He says, we accept that in our tradition that many children will remember their past lives, the most recent one, not necessarily all of them. And they'll act them out, they'll recite, they'll tell you about details. So what happened is that I started to recite the details of my most recent life as a prince in India named Jai Singh II, who is in the record books and existed as a real human, 1700s. He founded Jaipur, which is a pink city, famous pink city in India. His guru was a family guru or a court guru, and that was my guru. So this was during the time of Muslim occupation, and Hinduism was not appreciated to be practiced. So somehow we continued to do that despite, I think it's ironic that I'm in the West and now the Christian religion is the one that does not approve of what I do. So no matter what, in both lifetimes, my spiritual practice has not been condoned or approved of. And so to kind of speed it up, I was giving details of this life in India. And my mom was, not sure what was going on. I was telling about the heat, the turbans that we wore, the mosaic tiling, the interior of the palace, details. So this was really hard for people to understand here, especially growing up in Minnesota. So how this progresses, after this meeting, we got this confirmation. Oh yeah, he's Jai Simha, blah 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 blah. We knew him. He's going to do the same thing again in this life with his spiritual practice, and so then I was in my first grade class, and I did a presentation on the whiteboard. I did a collage, and I showed all these pictures from India, and I explained to the class in detail of everything. And so then my first grade teacher came up to my mother and she said, wow, I didn't know you guys went to India. That's fantastic. My mom said he's never been to India before. And my teacher just looked at her like she was a spiritually attuned person despite Minnesota, you know. She kind of got it. So she was actually somebody who looked out for me a lot at that age. And then as it progressed, I became initiated informally in bhakti yoga, and I was given the same mantra that I had in my previous life, which is associated with Durga, which is the divine mother, the protective. It's the she rides a tiger or a lion, and she's got like 12 arms and all these weapons. She's the protection goddess. So I'm not sure why, but evidently I needed protection, especially the dark realm things. It seems like I have an affinity for being exposed to the opposite side of the spectrum. You know, demons and the dark entities and such. They're very they come after me. So protection has always been something that I have needed. So that's the gist of the beginning of the story.
And so, you know, the thing I remember hearing was that you actually told your folks the name,
Yeah.
and they were able to go look it up and independently verify when you were so young.
Well, no. I didn't have the name. My teacher Keshavadas said that his name was Jai Simha. So sorry, yeah. But then
Okay,
we were able later to uh, um, find the proof of that. I
that's
still have the book. Actually, it's fantastic.
mind-blowing stuff. So getting back now, so we've talked about self-realization. Now let's talk a little bit more about how divination can help with. I think you put in your notes the process of ascent.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, not directly. It's more like you're using this as a process for your own self-realization because you're pulling, you're really stretching your brain. You're pulling from all these different traditions. You're pulling from symbolism. You're using your left and your right brain. You're using emotion, logic, creativity, color, light, sound, the whole gamut. So I think to become super conscious, you can't be just locked in, say, the right brain or even the left. You can't be, those are limited places to be. So I believe that the best leaps that I've had in my own spiritual practice is not necessarily doing the exact dogmatic thing that I was told to do, but really finding a way to cross-reference, say, I found something in the Bible that cross-references for the Bhagavad Gita. And I found something in tarot that cross-references with self-realization. So I think the moral of the story is you're really being creative and you're not just following, well, the book says this must be true. If I don't do it this way, it won't work. So you're also leaping out of that restrictiveness. I don't know why humans are like this, and we all have experienced this. Some are more stuck in it than others. But once you break out of that box, you sort of it's hard to really put into words. It's definitely expanding your consciousness. It's leading you to self-realization in a sort of indirect way. So that's kind of how I see it.
I really like that word creative to help explain what we're doing with tarot, right?
Yeah.
I think of this book, The Artist's Way. Are you familiar with The Artist's Way? It was written by a woman in I think the 70s who was kind of bringing together like recovery and therapy for artists.
Well, you know what? I have heard of that. Yeah, I have heard of that.
And the basic idea is that look, you know, like we were created and we're here on this planet to create. You know, it's like God made us, we're supposed to make something, you know, we're supposed to create something. And if
Mm-hmm.
we don't create something, you know, if we are frustrated artists, then we're going to be miserable, you
Right.
know. And so I really do see tarot as a way for kind of like living your life, you know, understanding your own existence as a work of art that you are constantly creating. And you know, there's all kinds of structures of the rational mind that are kind of not aligned with that goal, let's say, right? And I think that that's one of the reasons that we're stuck, is that we find all kinds of reasons why we can't create. I was supposed to get this chapter written, right? And I keep coming up with all kinds of reasons why I can't sit down and work on it. I'm not ready to work on this thing. And that's kind of like lies my rational brain is telling me. There's all kinds of good reasons why I shouldn't be doing this work, right? And how do we disrupt that?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that.
So let's talk about your system. We roll some dice. How's it work?
All right, I'll just grab some dice real quick just for fun.
And I understand you don't need to buy a product to do this. You don't need to, even buy a tarot deck. But this is something that you can do with materials we have at hand, just a few dice laying around.
Exactly. I mean, you can basically go to any store and buy a little pack of dice, and buy a pack of cards, $5 to $7. It's not very expensive. Obviously, I like to have more fun things, so I bought some colored dice and a lot of them because the first one was just 10 dice. And I wanted to say, okay, well, this is how I work. I'm like, all right, I'll create the simple version. And then what's next? How can I expand? So what if I rolled 45 dice? I mean, you can go as simple or you can go as complicated as you want. So the idea, I just have a few and one roll, and then you take each number. So in this one, we've got four five-sided dice, 1 6, 1 1, 1 3, sorry, 2 ones. That's it. And so you take those and then you put them in a little list delineated and say how much of each one you got, 1 through 6. And then, oh, of course, if you want to use Dungeons and Dragons dice, all that kind of stuff, that, by the way, I will. And I used to own some. I don't know what I do with them. That would be a whole nother fun. Okay, I have a 4-sided dice. I have a 6-sided dice. I have a 12-sided, a 20-sided dice. I mean, you can go, that what I like about this is there's really no limit. You can get really creative, or you can keep it really simple. So you put them all on a list, and then I will tally up the total number of the dice at the end of it. For the reading that I did on myself, it was 41. And in numerology, 41 means luck or prestige. So I'll put that at the very end of the reading and kind of fold it into the reading. It's not a perfect system, but it seems complete enough to get something useful out of it. And I think too that, especially for people who may not be familiar with these things, or they may not be really intellectually inclined and detail oriented, then I think simple is better. And also, if it's too complicated, like you were saying, that logical mind kind of gets in the way and it starts giving you reasons why you should maybe do something else, or maybe it should be this. But if you make it simple and everything, this is why I like mantras, because all of the thoughts that I would be thinking are pretty much gone, and I'm only thinking about that one sentence, and it frees my mind. Even though I'm doing something, it frees most of my mind to be intuitive, to be in space, to take leaps. So I think you're having the same thing with any kind of divination, where it's not so complicated that you have to think about it so much. And so you can just kind of get into a flow with it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. So tell me more about where my viewers can find you, and a little bit more about the work you do.
Well, I have a website called Atlantean Oak. That's what this is here. That's the blog. And I also have a YouTube channel called @Zenstello, which is Daniel Adam Costello. And of course, I can be found on all the social media platforms as well. I am definitely available in every possible way. This is just the modern world. I never wanted to do that, but yeah, you can find me anywhere, basically. And that's the idea.
And you're here to help. Tell me more about the kind of work that you do, the work that you like to do. What do you do for your clients?
Well, the thing that I like to do most is I'm creating a sort of yoga coaching or yoga consultation, where I take people who maybe have some familiarity with yoga already, some level of self-discipline, but they kind of hit a wall, maybe that going to that class and just doing the hatha yoga postures and saying om once in a while, and they're just not, like, and maybe they feel like they need to get somewhere and they're not getting there. I like to try to say, like, I know that people get stuck on the spiritual path. And the logical brain loves to get in the way and be like, I don't have time for this. I have to do this and that. And the deeper you get into it, you are able to override your own resistance. And so I suppose my whole real mission is to help people get over their own resistance and keep moving and to keep progressing. So that's complicated, but basically, is taking things like mantra and maybe a few yoga postures and maybe studying specific books and even specific excerpts that I compile, which I am, and then also using graphic art. So it looks nice, but it has symbolism and it's teaching you things that are difficult to put in. Words have a limit. And I do find that that imagery is really powerful, which is why I love symbolism so much. I mean, you can pack so much information into one picture. And I think that the human brain learns better. It able to not only retain the information, but integrate it. Because if you just study a book and you don't integrate it, what is it? If you don't use it or share it or teach it at least, then it's in one ear and out the other. And I've got to this point where I've read over 1,000 books in my life, easy, probably more. I haven't retained all that information. So more recently, when I do read now, I do it differently now. I try to really get deep into it. So I guess you could call it a kind of a informal school. And my mission is to incorporate that into an ashram that will be a physical center later on. But it'll also be holistic, how to live, how to get along with people, how to grow food, how to make some crafts, how to just, I don't know, have an interesting life. Not this cookie cutter concrete jungle life, like a real life. So that's sort of my overall mission. And I weave yoga, art, and all these different things, the blog, they all kind of go to that same goal. Hopefully that wasn't too
No,
out
that's
there.
great. Well, let's do a quick question. Let me ask you advice about my issue here. So, and I don't talk about this much on the channel. I probably should. When I was in my 20s, when I was in college, I really had my mind blown by the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, especially in the kind of more the mental side than the physical side. And I did some yoga practice, the stretching kind of stuff too. But I really had my mind blown by this, the way that you do dharana, and it deepens into dhyana, and it deepens into samadhi, this like keeping the mind focused on a single point sort of thing. And the thing is, I really struggle to make time to do this, but I often find myself sort of like spontaneously like, oh, I need to stretch, I'm going to do these stretches that I know how to do. I'll be sitting there, teaching a gym class, and I'll like do a stretch, right? And it's like, okay, well, I know how to do this, but why am I having so much trouble like making the time for it, like intentionally making time to practice? Uh, how can you help me with that?
Yeah, that's the best one. I think that every human on earth has that same issue, including me. And the simplest way that I can say is that you have to get a sort of a resolve. Like you have to really you have to like think that that thing is more valuable. I don't think that your mind is recognizing the value of it. So the very first thing is being like really, really, really adamant, like, oh, this is something I really need to do. And okay, so after that, your mind's always going to do this resistance thing. And mostly it's distractions. It's sort of like a permanent ADD that we all have. Well, I got to go do this. I don't have time for this. I got to do this. Or the inability to center the mind enough that despite doing all these activities, that you can say, I'm going to stretch now. And I'm going to meditate now. I'm going to focus on my breathing. I'm going to carve out a little bit of time, just 30 minutes right now. I have time. I'm going to do it. It's actually that simple. It's an issue with distraction and willpower. And the more you do this sort of thing, you develop like a secret power, a sort of secret ability, where that used to be. And trust me, if anybody is ADHD or ADD, it's me. I have every day I battle with myself about meditation and everything, and I'm not perfect about it. But I do so much of the other activities that I don't beat myself up about that one, because I am practicing meditation in different ways and getting similar results through other activities. So it also doesn't have to be that one thing. If you've got enough of a variety of things and you just find yourself doing them, you'll build up a strength, a reservoir over time, so that when that happens again, you've got some 15-minute break and you really feel like you wanted to work stretching into it, and not just on the stage, but say you're teaching the class and now you have a 15-minute break and you're like, you know what, I'm not hungry, I'm good, let's go to the bathroom real quick and I'm just going to pound out a few stretches, but I'm just going to do that during this time and I'm not going to worry about anything else. You develop a sort of power to do that. And I think that that normal person, average person who's not practicing doesn't have that power. So that the distraction is like more powerful than their own thought. And so they're off on the whatever it is, the next thing. And, maybe do one stretch and then you forget about it. But you're not, of course, you're not going to get as much benefit from it if you don't do more of it. So, I mean, I would just encourage the finding a way to really value this more than you do now. And so that your motivation is stronger. And then when the mood strikes you, you've already got that built up. Because let's face it, it has a lot to do with the mood striking you. It's very how many people are like so disciplined that they're going to do A, B, C all the way through the alphabet to Z every single day and never miss a beat. I mean, I've never met a human like that in my life. So hopefully that helps.
That is very helpful. I'm reminded of how, and we've only got a few minutes left on the recording, so let's, we're in conclusion at this point. I'm
Okay.
reminded of how, the reason that I started this show is that I just love having conversations like this, right? But I mean, as an adult, in the daily life of adulting, right? How many opportunities do we really have to have awesome conversations like this with our friends? It's like I had to start a show in order to kind of calibrate that priority, to kind of like start to build that resolve. I want to have more of these kind of conversations. I'm gonna make that happen. And this is a great, vehicle for that. And I'm really stoked to hear that you're working on this system of divination that's kind of a similar vehicle for doing the sort of thing that you want to do. We got a few more minutes left. Do you have any last thoughts, any concluding remarks about the connection between self-realization and divination?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna segue just a tiny bit, because what you said is really interesting to me, that I have also found that I like to have these sort of conversations. And I open myself up to a lot of people on social media because it's simply easier. And how many people have time for a phone call or a video chat? Good luck. So I've been able to get through to a lot of people because you can turn it off and you can turn it on. And what I found is that very few people value, I would just say, I tell people I'm interested with my businesses. I'm in business mode right now. I am networking just to network. That's it. I'm not DMing you with a sales pitch and not talking to you first. I know maybe it's a better strategy, but when did we stop being human? When did we stop valuing conversation? When did we stop valuing meeting with like-minded people? And why is it always got to be about the hustle? And so a lot of professionals, I did a lot of networking this summer. I would say 90% of the professionals I met are just straight up hustlers. They don't care. They don't care about you as a person. They just want you to buy their $5,000 speaking coaching package, which is about something like branding, which is useful, but that's it. It's in over and over. It's the same thing over and over. There's no depth to it. There's no realness. It's just a hustle. So I like to encourage people to, like you, is that you had to create a show, a channel to get people to do that, to calibrate it. And I feel the same way. So I think that actually is a part of self-realization. I think that when we do this, we're expanding our consciousness. We're growing. When we refuse to talk with one another or have deep conversations, we're just spinning our wheels, and then we're miserable, we're unhappy, and we don't know why. And it's because we're not humans need to be social. We need to have an actual society. And so I commend what you're doing is you're being creative and you're finding a way to use what everyone's using already, and but gearing it towards that. So I think what you're doing is actually expanding consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are my last. I know we got a couple minutes left, but those are my sort of last
yeah,
thoughts on.
that's good stuff. I'm thinking about how, like, the best conversations I have about this stuff, I mean, it was in college, but you're spending thousands of dollars to be in college, or like when I go to a academic conference. And I mean, the whole process of like preparing a speech that I'm going to give, getting questions during my speech, that's all great. But like where the action is happening is when a scholar that you met who, you say, hey, I'm so and so, I'm interested in this and that, they kind of take you under their wing. They introduce you to their grad students. You go out and have some drinks, right? And that's where the conversation really happens. That's where, the really valuable stuff happens. And, that's really what I'm trying to create in my show. And so I'll just say to my viewers, if you're interested in this stuff, if you made it this far, check out Daniel's Daniel's services, and you'll find somebody who's interested in doing the business of friendship, right? And interested in doing the business of self-realization and not just trying to sell you something. And maybe we can have a great conversation about how we're trying to deepen our practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would encourage you to keep doing this with different kinds of people, different kinds of, I don't know, professionals, spiritual professionals, whatever you want to call it. And thank you for saying that. I mean, the thing that I have to offer immediately is that I am working on having services available, but from the beginning, I built my companies backwards and focused on free and people and creative content and more for free, more to chew into, more to dig into, versus withholding and only giving you, it may not be the smartest financial or fiscal or business decision, but it's a human decision. So thank you for
And
saying that.
it feels good to do it that way. Thanks so much for being here. That's all the time we got. Be curious, my friends, and